Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be going over a 2018 Sun Moon 2 Lost Thunder deck profile. I did play this Guardy, a similar list to my tournament, and from that tournament's testing on the channel, I did get to kind of improve some things about the list, so to speak, for the modern metagame of the format. Of course, this Guardy list, as with any Guardy GX list from some lot, is very heavily based on Jimmy Pendarvis's regional winning list. Rest in peace, really, really good list, really, really good player. We don't change all that much, but there is changes to be made to address stall in the modern meta. So I'm going to be talking about things as we go. The first big change is that you'll notice I play the other Ralts. 3 copies of Ralts from Lost Thunder. You do lose 10 HP in the transition, so you do give up a little bit of percentage into spread decks. We play this because it has the back-end attack. Put a supporter card from your pile into your hand. This is really good. This is the crux of how this deck is going to be able to beat stall, because we want to be able to reuse supporter cards. It's also really good if you start this Ralts, you have Fairy Energy in your hand, and you start, let's just say, a supporter card, use it, put it back to your hand. Even if you put back a card like Elm that isn't that useful, if you don't have another supporter, it can thin your deck. If you have a Swampert ready to go next turn, you can discard the Elm and not have to discard something more valuable. It's really good. Beat is also okay. We played this Kirlia. Disarming Voice can confuse. The other Kirlia does have a 1 energy attack, so really pick and choose. I think this one's a little bit better though, just because confusion can sometimes be a game changer. Also, beautiful artwork by Koki Saito. 3 copies of Gardevoir GX. Secret Spring, accelerating some energy is nice. It's very weak acceleration, but it's a good attacker and it has a good ability, so it makes up for that. Infinite Force, 30 times the amount of energy attached to both active Pokemon, so essentially a Mewtwo X Ball attack, but more juiced up. Since it can accelerate to itself, you can get lots of energy on there and one-hit KO just about anything in the format. Twilight GX shuffles 10 cards from your discard into your deck. Can be good for getting back cards, especially against stall decks and against spread decks. They're going to try to torment you with that, so you can get back some healing cards, stuff like that. Just a huge Pokemon that one-hit KOs everything. If you've seen Gardevoir, you know how this guy runs. We play 1 copy of Gardevoir from Lost Thunder. This is a rarely played card that I decided to pick up. 130 HP is actually really good. It means you live a Riotous Beating plus a Decidueye Feather Arrow, which would do 120. You do unfortunately die to a second Feather Arrow, so do be careful of that. Or, you know, a Feather Arrow on the next turn they have, which means you'll give up a prize and then be forced to switch into something else. But notable with the Dark Resistance, it does make a difference. Brilliant Search. Search your deck for up to 3 cards and put them into your hand. This is pretty bad. We don't want to use this. Because there isn't a lot of disruption in this format, you can stick it, but you prefer not to be using this if at all possible. Sensitive Ray for Fairy Double Colorless does 70 if you played a supporter card from your hand, does 90 more. This synergizes well with the Beckon Ralts, meaning we can get a supporter back to make sure we have boosted damage, or just make sure you're not using supporters if you don't have to for this attack to get your max damage. This is really good as an attacker against Stall, as Stall has a Hoopa that will block your Gardevoir GX from attacking it, and our other attackers in the deck also can't get through that Hoopa more than once. So this Gardevoir allows you to hit through multiple Hoopas, and you also hit very, very hard into Stall's other wall Pokemon, the ones that aren't immune to GX and EX. So this gives you a really good attacker into Stall. So really important if you're trying to combat Stall, you want this Gardevoir and you want this Ralts. That's the starters of our changes. 2 copies of Vulpix. Lovely little guy, 60 HP and Beacon. Search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon Veilment, put them into your hand. Incredible attack, incredible setup Pokemon because it evolves into Ninetales. Solid 200 HP. Mysterious Guidance searches the deck for 2 items when you evolve it. Usually you want to be able to find your Candy or your search cards so you can start setting up Gardevoirs and Swamperts. This thing's also a great attacker in this deck since you play Fairy Energy. Snowy Wind does 70 and 30 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Good for KOing basic Pokemon and laying down some extra damage. Good also as well at just taking on Fairy Weak Pokemon like Rayquaza for less energy than a Gardevoir if they're not set up. It's also got Sublimation GX. If your opponent's active Pokemon is an Ultra Beast, it's knocked out. Really good against Blacephalon in particular. Just get an instant one-hit KO on that. We play a 2-1-2 Swampert line. Nothing changed here from Jimmy's list. 60 HP Mudkip. Unfortunately, its attack is completely useless in this deck. However, we play 60 HP so that we can get it with our Elm Supporter. Marshtomp, also useless attacks. 90 HP, though, is pretty decent for a stage 1. And Swampert with 160 on the stage 2 is also very big. Power Draw discards a card from your hand and allows you to draw 3 cards. It's our main draw engine in the deck. You're going to want to get one of these up and running pretty soon into the game. That way you can start finding your cards that you need. Don't prioritize it over a Gardevoir always, because sometimes you need to protect your Curlias and Ralts from being KO'd so you don't have any attackers. But you do kind of want this guy to get out early. Notable is the attack Hydro Pump, which we can use with 1 energy in our deck. Does 20 more for the amount of water energy attached to the Pokemon. You can use this to hit a one-time 160 damage attack. Usually, if you hit that attack, your special energy is getting discarded or this thing's getting KO'd. And you won't be able to redo it. 2 copies of Tapu Lele with Wonder Tag. When you play it from your hand to your bench, search your deck for a supporter and put it into your hand. Just really good. We want to get our supporter to set up, and this also allows us to chase down Guzmas or switch supporter. We do play a lot of different supporters in this deck, so this is even doubly important as we can chase down our supporters for stall as well, that we'll talk about in a bit. Energy Drive, also a good, decent attack, weaker version of Gardevoir's attack. 20 for each energy attached to both active. Unfortunately, not affected by weakness or resistance. So, in a pinch, if nothing else, this thing can throw some hands. If you happen to start this and you have a Guzma in hand, you can attach a double colorless, bring something up and hit 40 to 60 damage. If your opponent attached, let's just say to their benched only attacker in play, let's say they benched a Zorua, attached a double colorless, you can bring it up and energy drive it for knockout. Tapu Kir we can't use. 1 type of Cosmog, 60 HP again. Unfortunately, there isn't the Cosmog that protects itself in this format on the bench. However, we do have Dust Gathering just to draw a card. It isn't awful. We play it for Solgaleo, big 250 HP, stage 2. Shining Mane removes your weakness from all your Pokemon, so really, really good. There's a few steel types around that will give Gardevoir trouble, so do watch out for things like Registeel and a Malamar deck. And the Solgaleo right here, which will also hit your Gardevoir's weakness. Turbo Strike, incredibly efficient attack, doing 120. Attach up to 2 basic energy attach 2, not up to 2, from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. So if you lose some fairies, usually we will with our healing card, then you can accelerate them back. Also just really solid damage. Does unfortunately miss that 130 threshold, which is a lot of Pokemon in this format. A lot of the basic Pokemon like Giratina have 130, so unfortunately we're missing that, and I think Tapu Koko has resistance, so I believe we also missed that because it is 110 and will only do 100 with resistance. I could be wrong on that Tapu Koko thing. And then Prominence GX heals all damage from all your Pokemon. This is vitally important. It's another healing thing. It doesn't get rid of energy, which is really good, and what's really important about this is that it fixes our problems into stall. We're not 100-0 into stall with this, but we are a lot better off than not having Solgaleo in the deck to answer, not stall, spread. Also helps against stall, but spread is very common in this format. There's Malamar spread, Honchkrow spread, Weaviles flying around everywhere. There's, Cocos, Latioses, just Tapu Koko Passimian deck with spread. There's all kinds of spread running around. This is your answer to spread. Some of the weaker spread decks, they'll just stop spreading once they see you play Solgaleo and try to just prevent this from coming into play. With Shrine around, putting damage on all our GX and EX, having this is really good. 4 copies of Elm, this is our setup supporter that we can search with Lele, especially early on you want to do that. Search your deck for up to 3 Pokemon with 60 HP or less, reveal them, put them into your hand. Unfortunately, we don't play any evolved Pokemon with 60 HP or less. If we could, we would, but we can search out our Ralts, our Mudkip, and our Vulpix with Elm's Lecture. You'll notice I don't play the Ditto Prism Star in this deck. Well, we do have 3 stage 1s we could evolve it into. I just wasn't finding the Ditto Prism Star to be as consistent, and putting it down was often a risky play in this deck, more than it was worth just giving me an extra slot. So I did cut that, but we do still have our normal 60 HP guys. 2 copies of Cynthia. Shuffle your hand in your deck and draw 6. I did cut this down from Jimmy's 3. Jimmy's list is generally more consistent because of that, because it's going to have that third Cynthia. My list is a little bit more tacked out for stall, so it's going to be a little bit less consistent in that regard, though we also have Beck and Ralts, which you can argue boost your consistency if you start it. 2 copies of Guzma. Switch one of your opponent's bench with their active and switch your active with one of your bench. Gives you a switching card if you get stuck, and also allows you to, most importantly, target down your opponent's benched Pokemon. We just want to bring the smack down, so if our opponent puts up something with 0 energy, our Gardevoir is not really going to be doing much. So bring up something in the active that they don't want here and evict it from the mortal plane. 1 copy of Faba. This is another attack for stall, but also good against lots of different decks. Choose a tool or special energy card attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon or any stadium card in play. Really big. Put it into Lost Zone. So crucially, we're not letting our opponent get it back. It's going to Lost Zone. Control decks can infinitely loop their control and stall infinitely loops their stadiums with Lusamine, unless it's in the Lost Zone, in which they can't get it back. So using Faba, we're going to be able to get rid of our opponent's shrines, which is the biggest thing. You can bump the shrine, but then they just get it back. This is really going to give us our leg up. One of the reasons this is really important to note is that it also gives rid of special energy, so you can get rid of DCEs against Zoroark or choice bands against decks in a pinch. It really has all kinds of uses, and with this deck's a little bit slower pace, you'll get time to use it. One thing I will say is that be sure against stall and control that you do not let this hit the discard pile. When you play it for turn, use your Ralts or use Gardevoir's Infinite GX and put it back, either into your hand or into the deck, because Giraffe Rig puts cards from the discard pile into the Lost Zone, and they will get rid of your Faba. 100% they are not going to let you reuse Faba if they have the opportunity to get rid of it. So my advice, just use the Ralts, beckon it back to hand, and just loop that. We also have another control supporter here with Attack Judge. Each player shuffles their hand to their deck and draws 4 cards. Usually if we have a Swampert online, we are very consistent, and we are consistent enough to play Judge. If you don't have a Swampert online, sometimes Judge can be a little bit of a pain to use to set up, for instance. What you want to do with this card, though, is similar thing to Faba. Against control, they want to build up their hand using Steven's Resolve. So they're just going to search any 3 cards, and in their turn, you just want to shuffle that into their deck, give them 4 cards that they don't want as much, and make things difficult. Also, Zoroark is going to get a very large hand size. They're not a big fan of getting put down to 4 cards. Even though they're going to be able to trade over and over out of it, it still forces them to discard more valuable resources rather than what they were probably holding on to, which they probably had things like Elms in that previous hand that were easier to discard. So just really good, and like I said, with the Beck and Ralts, it is able to be looped, which is very valuable. 1 copy of Lily. Draw until you have 6 in hand. If it's your first turn, draw until you have 8. I could be convinced out of Lily. I don't think you absolutely need it, but it is good to have. It turns any Ultra Ball for a Lele into a very strong draw. You could cut this for another Cynthia, potentially. I think once you have the Swampert online, Lily is a lot less effective. But I haven't hated having Lily around at all. Also, just a very, very nice art on this supporter. 1 copy of Tate and Liza. Shuffle and draw 5, or switch your active Pokemon. You get to choose one of these. It's another switch card without switching our opponent. Notable because we can be trapped by Counter Catcher if we're not careful. Can also be looped with Ralts, so keep that in mind. And shuffle draw 5 isn't too bad, considering it just gives us 5 new cards. So if you have to use this instead of Cynthia, it's not too big of a deal. 4 copies of Candy. This is the optimal Candy art for this format. Choose one of your basics in play, evolve it into a stage 2. Can't use it your first turn or the turn a basic Pokemon was put into play. So really good. We play max copies because we have Swamperts and we have Gardevoirs, and once we even set them up, you can discard Candy if you don't need it anymore. Typically, it's good to have 4, that way you can find it sooner than later. 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Discard 2 cards from your hand. Search your deck for a Pokemon. Turn 1, you can turn any Ultra Ball into a Tapu Lele to find a supporter card from the deck. Keep you consistent. Also just pretty good at finding your Swamperts and your Gardevoirs to finish combos with your search. Notable that we can search this out with Alolan Ninetales, so if you search a rare candy and an Ultra Ball, you get a Stage 2 of your choice into play. 2 copies of Max Potion, heal all damage from one of your Pokemon. If you do, discard all energy. Because we can accelerate energy back with Gardevoir, it's not too big of a deal to discard usually. The energy from that, though do be careful not to run out of energy, so then you have to put some back with Gardevoir's GX attack. Healing all damage is really good. We live Zoroark attacks all day, every day with our Gardevoir, so if they attack you for like 100, usually boosted to like 130 with Choice Band, to try to get a 2-shot in there, just remove the damage with Max Potion, accelerate enough energy to knock out the Zoroark, and they are mad piss pants babies after you do that. 1 copy of Timer Ball, flip 2 coins for each head, search your deck for an evolution Pokemon, and put it into your hand. We play 1 copy because it's searchable off of our Ninetales Mysterious Guidance. You search 2 items. You can find Candy and Timer Ball or Candy and Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball is the guaranteed one, but sometimes you don't have enough cards in hand early on to make the best use of Ultra Ball, so Timer Ball is a good one to have. Also just good to have consistency. 2 copies of Choice Band. Attach this Pokemon of the Pokemon this card is attached to, do 30 more damage to your opponent's active GX or EX. I know we could just play more energy, but this is searchable with Ninetales, and this helps bridge the gap with KOs, because we can't attach unlimited energy into play during a turn. So very notable that if we have a Gardevoir to KO a Zoroark, you will need, if they have 2 energy on them, you will need to have then 6 30s, so you can make... sorry, not 6 30s. They will do 2 of that, so you'll need 5. So you can do a double colorless and 2 spring, secret springs with your Gardevoirs in play, and then attach Choice Band, and that will make 210 for the knockout. Also just good with the Alolan Ninetales GX. You can hit for 100, which with weakness will take out a Rayquaza GX and spread some damage to the bench for a little bit of a bonus. Really, really good. 2 copies of Brooklet Hill, once during each player's turn, search the deck for basic water or fighting and put it onto their bench. Really, really good. It's kind of like our way of running Nest Ball. You could argue for Nest Ball, but it's also good to have a stadium bump so you can get rid of things like Devoured Field and, most importantly, Shrine of Punishment, which are really, really bad to have in play. Gets us our Mudkips, gets us our Vulpixes. Vulpix is especially important because if you can get an energy in hand, let's just say I start a Mudkip, I'll Brooklet Hill for Vulpix, attach the energy and retreat the Mudkip, and then I can use the free Beacon attack on Vulpix to search for 2 Pokemon. For DCE, Brides do colorless. Gardevoir's attack is based on colorless, so the amount of energy attached to it, so this makes sense. Also can be paid for Tapu Lele's attack, and Swampert's attack, and the Baby Guardian's attack. 1 Super Boost, it's a Prism Star, so if it gets discarded, it goes to the Lost Zone. Do keep that in mind. It provides colorless, but if it's attached to a Stage 2 and you have 3 or more Stage 2s in play, which is very doable for this deck, it provides 4 energy. This just allows our Gardevoirs to turn into an absolute nuke. Even if your opponent throws up something that really should never be KO'd by a Gardevoir, you can make it happen with Super Boost energy. It also, as I said, allows us to use Swampert's Hydro Pump, which will give us a 1-time 160. I say 1 time because your opponent's probably going to knock you out, or the Enhanced Hammer this energy away if they see it as soon as possible, because this card is a scary sight to see. You do not want to leave this in play on your opponent's board. And we play 7 Fairies. I just chose 7 because I think it's just a good number. I think Jimmy had around a similar number, probably the same. Let's just go take a peek. Yeah, he had 7 as well. So same energy lineup here. But it's just a good energy lineup. He really had this deck figured out perfectly. Like I said, his list is just an incredible list. As you can see, I really didn't change that many cards. It's more just tacked out for beating Control and Stall. And also this deck just has a great matchup into most decks into the meta. Really has just about everything. It's a tier 1 deck in my opinion, and I think with the ability to beat Stall, it really doesn't fade at all like some other decks have from their inability to take on Stall in the modern context of Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder. Thank you all so much for watching this video though on Gardevoir GX. This format's not too expensive, so I recommend you build it yourself. This list is pretty good, or you could just build Jimmy's and pretend that Stall doesn't exist, because unfortunately if you don't have things like this Gardevoir and this Ralts and these 2 supporters, you have a really hard time dealing with that matchup. So just don't play it, I guess, if you don't want to tech your list out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.